Alright, hello everyone. So we're going to finish chapter 11 today, and I want to talk about other sampling ideas and some things that cause sampling bias. So this is chapter 11. Continued. And we want to start out first with other sampling ideas. So, we're going to talk about some ways that can help us sample more effectively. So the first kind we want to talk about is stratified sampling. And the idea here is oftentimes you have certain well-known representations of parts of your population, and you want to slice it up that way. So slice populations into homogeneous groups and then sample from them. So sometimes we call these groups the strata. So strata is just plural of stratum, the singular. Okay, so an example of this might be at a university. It's well known that the population is 60% male and 40% female. So you want to conduct a sample in this way. So just a random sample might end up with a representation not of that ratio. So in order to do a stratified sample, we can just choose a sample of 100, just to keep the math easy, with 60 men chosen at random, and 40 women chosen at random. So that's how you could do a stratified sample. Second method is cluster sampling. And so here what we want to do is split the population into some kind of representative clusters. Then select clusters at random. And then the last kind is we could have a multi-stage sampling, where we combine one or more of these methods. So let's look at an example of that. That's going to involve both of these. So such an example might check the reading level of a book. So first you might divide the text into 6 parts. Possibly by difficulty. If it's a textbook, often the difficulty increases and becomes more technical as you move forward. And then you could choose clusters of pages from each chapter And then lastly, you might take an SRS, a simple random sample, from each cluster. Okay, the fourth and last method I want to talk about is systematic sampling, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's just where you use a predetermined method to select someone. It's often the easiest way, but doesn't always guarantee randomness as much as you would like. So, the method of selecting individuals by some predetermined procedure. So you might not guarantee that you're going to get all the attributes you would like in your sample. The advantage of systematic sampling is it's often very cheap. So let's look at an example and just kind of identify these things. So describe the sampling method. So basically what we do is we have a random sample of 300 passengers on the flight, and we're going to select samples in the following ways. So the first one, pick every 10th passenger. This would very clearly be systematic. That's all we're doing is identifying each individual by a common pattern. Next way we have from the boarding list, choose 5 first class passengers and 25 passengers from coach. Again, this should be pretty clear. You probably have a certain ratio of such passengers on the flight, and this is an example of stratified. C, randomly generate .30 seat numbers. And survey those passengers. They don't indicate any necessarily groups that we're trying to make sure, so this would just be an example of a simple random sample, assuming we're guaranteeing true randomness. And then the last method, D, randomly select a seat position. Let's say, window, middle, or aisle, and survey all passengers in those seats. And this is going to be an example of doing a cluster sample. Okay, so now let's move on to common sampling mistakes. So part 2, common sampling mistakes. So the first one, if you allow sample volunteers. This can create what is called, so basically this happens when you invite a large group and only those that respond are counted. This is often biased toward those with strong opinions and those who are strongly motivated. Two, sampling conveniently. And basically this is just doing whatever is cheapest, so you're just selecting the easiest to sample. And this is going to be biased. It doesn't necessarily represent those well due to the methodology associated to a particular subgroup. Right? We talked about the phone example way back when they had the straw polls. They only allowed for those that had phones at the time. So that's due to the bad methodology. You could select a bad sampling frame. And a bad sampling frame is going to have the problem that it introduces bias because individuals included may differ from those not in the frame. And the last sampling error we have is under coverage. So this happens when a portion of the population is not sampled or underrepresented. And a non-response bias may occur. So let's go ahead and look at an example that kind of takes care of these. So number 26 on page 315. A large city school system wants to implement a new policy and wants to know if the parents agree with the plan. So identify the sampling strategy and any biases that may result. So A, let's say we put out an ad and ask for a response on a website. Okay, so I was kind of running up against the wall in time, so I wrote these down. So the first one is put out an ad and respond on a website. So this is voluntary response. And it's going to be biased towards those that see the ad, those that actually have internet, and those that are compelled to respond, as we saw before. The second method would be randomly select the school and contact parents by phone. So this would be cluster sampling. And it's going to have a bias because one school may not be typical of the entire city school system. The third method is send a survey with the students and ask them to return. This is actually an attempted census, but you're going to have a problem because there is a non-response bias. And then the last method is randomly select 20 from each school and then send a survey and then finally call to follow up. So this is stratified sampling, with each school in the school system being the strata, and it has the follow-up, so this should actually be an unbiased attempt. So that is it for chapter 11. I'm going to write down on the announcement that for the quiz you should do page 315, number 19 to 22, and bring it to class next week. All right, or actually on Friday, so I'll see you then.